We just got a brand new Nintendo Direct, being one of the longest they have ever done, clocking in at over an hour. With that large amount of time, it was pretty predictable that Nintendo would have a lot of announcements to go with it, like... what? No. Okay, so the recent Direct was a little rough, but at least they finally showed off DLC for Mario Kart World, right? You're getting Virtual Boy! Surprisingly, we didn't see Mario Kart World at all in this presentation, and I think most people were at least looking for an announcement. Despite that, I think it's still safe to assume that we will get DLC eventually. I mean, there's no way Nintendo charges $20 for something in Donkey Kong and puts nothing in Mario Kart. Part of what many of us are expecting to see are brand new tracks. After all, Mario Kart World has an extremely low count of only 30. Part of that selection would likely be retro tracks, and that got me thinking back to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. None of the original Mario Kart 8 Deluxe tracks made it into Mario Kart World, which I thought was pretty surprising. Sure, we have had those tracks for over a decade, but it's still kinda weird to not see a single one receive an update. The closest we got was Sky High Sunday, but that's really just a tour track that happened to also come out in 8 Deluxe. With that being said though, I don't think it's impossible for us to see a Mario Kart 8 track return as DLC, but which track would it be? I thought it'd be fun to take this time before any DLC is announced to go through every original Mario Kart 8 track and rate its chances to return on a tier list. There are 25 tracks made specifically for that game, so we're gonna find out which is the best and which has the worst shot. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel, and let's jump right in. Now, what makes this question a bit more interesting than just what track do I vibe with more are the limitations present in Mario Kart World. Despite all of the new additions like parkour mechanics, we did lose a few core track design elements in the transition between games. The most obvious of which is anti-gravity, which was the big selling point of Mario Kart 8. For that reason, just about every single original track has it in some capacity. Now, before I continue, spoiler, Mario Kart World does technically have anti-gravity, it's just exclusively seen on Rainbow Road. To me, it seems like they want to avoid anti-gravity due to how it may break the game's open world and new mechanics. So for this video, we'll have to look at how each track uses anti-gravity and if I think it could be redesigned without it. For certain tracks, anti-gravity is so core to their identity that I can't see them ever being added without it, whereas others barely use the feature. So for the sake of this video, the less anti-gravity a track has, the better. Underwater driving was also replaced by surface water driving in World, which will also be a factor to consider in some of our choices. Obviously, tracks that use underwater driving like Wario Shipyard still made it into World, but the quality of that track is a bit questionable. So again, the less underwater driving a track has, the better. The final main factor is a bit less obvious, and that would be how the track slots into the open world. I imagine if they did do DLC, they'd have to connect the tracks to the world somehow. I mean, Nintendo is obsessed with intermissions for some reason. So if tracks are, say, in an enclosed space, that could make them harder to work with. On top of that, I think they would try to go with themes that are more unique from what's already in the game. Obviously, they don't always do this. I mean, we got 4 Mario circuits in the last game, but with a limited track count as is, I think they'd want some more variety. So with our primary factors listed out, let's go in order of the tracks in the game to see which ones I think are making it. Starting with the Mushroom Cup, we got Mario Kart Stadium, possibly the best starter course in any Mario Kart game. Now, like every first track of the series, it is incredibly simple, but they added Toad Circuit as DLC, so you never know. At least visually, it's decently distinct from anything in World. Sure, SNES Mario Circuit has a giant Mario statue, but so does my desk, and you wouldn't call those the same thing, would you? I'm lying, I haven't bought the set yet, I'm sorry. The main concern, of course, comes with the fact that this track was made to introduce anti-gravity for the first time. That means we got a pretty vertical turn near the midpoint of the stage, but at the same time, it's not so extreme that the track couldn't work without it. You could certainly pull a reverse GBA Mario circuit and just lower the turn without the gameplay really feeling much different. The problem with that would just be the fact that there would be no point to bring this track back if it didn't have anti-gravity. Seeing as the point is to introduce the mechanic, it would just feel like a shell of its former self if it was removed. So while they could do it, I don't think they would. I'm gonna place Mario Kart Stadium in D tier. Oh yeah, D tier's back. Next up is Water Park, and I mean, where do you think this is gonna go? Because you might be a little wrong. This track uses both anti-gravity and underwater driving quite a bit. However, I'm not sure if either of those are necessarily essential in the track's identity. Again, think back to Wario Shipyard. Even if you prefer the underwater version, the fact of the matter is that they did bring it to Mario Kart World anyway. I could see Water Park getting a heavy redesign where they have us drive on the water surface at parts and bring the different underwater attractions to the surface. The bigger concern might actually be the anti-gravity scene for the subcoaster, but honestly, since that's just one big boring turn anyway, I could see a remake completely redesigning that. I mean, think of how different stuff like Choco Mountain is from its original. These tracks have a lot of potential to be changed. Seeing as the subcoaster being an anti-gravity isn't really part of the track's identity in my mind, I think it could be changed to be more flat without much of a loss. I could definitely see them wanting to implement rail grinding with this. Water Park also has the perk of being a pretty unique set piece for the open world, as it could be quite fun to explore a water park. The main downside is just the fact fact that this is one of 8's least popular tracks, so I don't see it being a priority. For all these reasons, I think it can be saved from F tier, but due to just how much redesigning it would need, I'm putting it below Mario Kart Stadium in D tier. Also, I'm not kidding, I'm just now noticing that no keys are on the stage.
I thought you were dead. My death was greatly exaggerated.
Sweet Sweet Canyon is a bit more interesting. Thematically, we do already have a Sweet Space stage in the form of Sky High Sundae, but I think color-wise, these two are different enough to where they could coexist, especially since this one would be a lot more grounded compared to Sky High Sundae being, well, in the sky. As for the track layout, this is another track that uses both anti-gravity and underwater driving. Oh, sorry, This is honestly so minimal though that it could either be completely cut or turned into a section where you drive on top with basically no layout change required. The anti-gravity is a bit trickier though, which comes in right after the soda. You have to choose between either a blue or pink path, where they then twist around each other using the mechanic. Now luckily, I don't really think these being an anti-gravity is integral to the track's identity. I could easily see these parts of the tracks being turned into flatter sections. The directions of the turns might have to change, but I don't think that's a huge deal. If they spruce up both of these paths with new parkour mechanics, maybe even letting you jump between the railings on both roads, I think that could definitely make up for the loss. So while this track would need some redesigning, I could certainly still see it working, so I'll give this a B tier. Thwomp Ruins ends off the Mushroom Cup, and I honestly think this one has a pretty good shot. While this does use both anti-gravity and underwater driving, it's even more minimal than our previous track. The underwater portion is an optional route in the middle of the track that's literally just a straightaway. Simply changing this to be surface driving is all they would have to do to port this over, no real redesign needed. The anti-gravity is used throughout the track as another optional route to ride on the walls. Not only do most people not even go on these, since Mario Kart World added wall riding, they could easily change these segments to be more supportive of World's unique mechanics. Maybe they could have you drive on the wall inside the temple to make a tricky jump onto a rail or something like that. There is also a required anti-gravity portion after the big central area, but it's one of those that doesn't really feel like anti-gravity at all. I mean, I wasn't even 100% sure this was anti-gravity before looking back at the track for this video. On top of how easy it would be, Thwomp Ruins also has a great aesthetic that would be fun to explore in the open world. Sure, we do have great question block ruins, but that stage is a lot more gold themed, while this stage is more So for all those reasons, I think Thwomp Ruins has a really solid shot to return, so I'm gonna put this up in A tier. Kicking off the Flower Cup, we got Mario Circuit. This is, in my opinion, the single least likely track to return from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. It is the anti-gravity track, as it literally does not work at all without the mechanic. Due to it being a Mobius strip, you literally can't redesign this without it being a completely different track. Since this is also just another Mario Circuit anyway, on top of the two that are already in world, I see no reason to even entertain the idea that this would join in. I mean, Peach's Castle is also a central element of this track, and that's being taken by Peach Stadium. Mario Circuit literally has nothing going for it. Easiest F tier of the video. I do like this track, and maybe if they did bother adding anti-gravity it could join in, but as of right now, this is the only reasonable spot to put this. On the polar opposite end of the tier list though, Toad's Harbor has an incredibly likely chance. Despite being near the water, underwater driving is never used here, so that wouldn't be an issue at all. As for anti-gravity, this track literally only uses it on an optional route. It's another wall riding segment, which they could easily replace with something that better fits the engine without changing the core track. Speaking of, this also has the advantage of having a very obvious place to benefit from Mario Kart World's new mechanics, namely with the trolleys, as Mario Kart World could allow us to rail grind on their tracks. So I definitely think Toad's Harbor is one of the most likely courses for Mario Kart 8 to make it into World. The only thing I could see holding it back is just the fact that it does have some similar vibes to Salty Salty Speedway and the new Peach Beach area, but I think the fact that you don't go in the water here and the presence of the trolleys do make it distinct enough. I'm gonna put this one up in S tier, definitely well deserving of that position. Next up, we got Twisted Mansion. I think this image describes the Flower Cup pretty perfectly. This track heavily uses both anti-gravity and underwater driving, to the point where I would say they're important to the track's identity. I mean, it's called Twisted Mansion. I think it might have a little bit to do with anti-gravity. If they were to bring this back, it would need a heavy reimagining. There are some parts that could easily be changed, like the waving walls at the start could just be on the floor, but that does feel like some flair is being stripped away there. The fact that a third of the track is underwater could just be removed, but again, that's a lot of the personality that's just gone if they do that. The outside of the mansion could survive without any changes at least, but the hit to the main area just seems too great to justify the heavy amount of reworking that would need to be done. Also consider that we already have a spooky map in the form of Boo Cinema. Yes, a Haunted Mansion and Haunted Theater are different enough to where they could both work, but I think it does make the effort required to change Twisted Mansion seem a little less worthwhile. I'm gonna put this one at the bottom of D tier. Shy Guy Falls finishes up the Flower Cup, and I think this one is a bit tragic. I really like this track, but that's because of how well it uses anti-gravity. The whole point is that we're using it to ride up and down waterfalls, and that's just not something they can do without the mechanic. Maybe they could have the falls be on steep slopes instead of being straight up and down, but that just feels a lot lamer. This sort of cliffside mine setting would be such a fun place to explore in the open world too, but I just sadly don't think it was meant to be. I'll put it above Twisted Mansion in D tier, since the sloped waterfalls could happen and would likely be easier than a total mansion redesign. On to my personal favorite cup in the series to this day, we got the Star Cup. Believe it or not, the intermissions did not change my mind in World. Shocking. This kicks off with Sunshine Airport, and this track literally has no issues whatsoever. First off, an airport setting would be completely unique for the open world and would easily slot in anywhere. Most importantly though, it doesn't use underwater driving, and this might have the most pathetic anti-gravity segment we've seen yet. Yes, it's required, but it's just a floating strip of land in the sky, one that I think is even flat enough in Mario Kart 8 to be driven on without anti-gravity anyway. In fact, we basically see something exactly like this in World on some of the intermissions leading to Airship Fortress. So they could 100% port Sunshine Airport into Mario Kart World with basically no changes beside obviously adding in new parkour stuff. Add on that this is an extremely well-liked course too, and I see no reason for this not to be at the top of the list in S tier. I would be shocked if anyone disagrees with that. Track 2 is Dolphin Shoals, and it's the low point of both this cup quality-wise and on this tier list. It uses underwater driving so much that I genuinely can't imagine this track without it. This isn't a Wario Shipyard situation where they could just bring up some of the things to the water surface either. Most of the track is designed around jumping between wind pipes and tricking on Unagi's back. And I don't want to see that thing on the surface. That's before even getting to the one portion that's above the surface being an anti-gravity. Sure, they could fix that, but if the rest of the track is going to cause so many issues, why even bother? Honestly, I think this belongs in F tier. I just can't imagine them ever doing this track without underwater driving. It's at least a little more possible than Mario Circuit though. Electrodrome is up next, and it's one of the coolest tracks in the series. Unfortunately though, this seems really difficult to port into World. Now surprisingly, a lot of this track is actually outdoors. Whenever I picture it, I imagine we're inside a disco building, but nope, we can clearly see the sky and other buildings nearby. I think that makes it more likely to work in an open world since a whole building wouldn't have to be designed and driven into. The main issue is that Electrodrome has a lot of flair to it. The reason this track is so loved is because of its bombastic colors and raving lights, and I'm not sure if Mario Kart World's open world would allow for it to blend in as seamlessly as they'd want. Now that's not to say they couldn't make it work, and I think Electrodrome is a good enough course to make it worth that effort. But then we have to actually look at the track's design, and yeah, that's a lot of anti-gravity. A majority of the track takes place under it as we drive on this wall near the start and directly into two split paths. While it's probably possible for them to remove the anti-gravity, I think part of Electrodrome's charm is the twisty nature of the paths circling the disco. Without that, it would just feel like it loses so much of its flashy vibe. Now the track is popular enough to where Nintendo might want to take the effort to redesign it, and it's not technically as tied to anti-gravity like a few of the past tracks, but it just wouldn't feel the same to me. I think I'll have to put Electrodrome into C tier. For cool. Next up, we have my favorite original track from Mario Kart 8, Mount Wario. Is that a track or is that a command? Now this one was hard for me because I'm a bit conflicted about its placement. In terms of our band mechanics, it doesn't use underwater driving at all, and I'd say the anti-gravity is used at a minimum. There's this portion where we drive on the walls of the cavern, but I don't think it needed to be an anti-gravity. The ski slope at the end being anti-gravity is just stupid. I mean, there's literally nothing going on there. The main concern would be the anti-gravity having us drive along the dam in section 2. That is actually a pretty cool idea and something they wouldn't be able to do otherwise. Luckily, I wouldn't say driving on the dam is an essential element of Mount Wario, it just sort of adds to how good the track already is. If they had to make us drive on a normal path next to the dam, it would definitely be lamer, but understandable. So while I think they could get the gameplay to work just fine, it's the open world that's gonna kill Mount Wario for me. This is a big track, that's what makes it so good. Because of that though, it would take up a lot more area than a standard 3-lap track, which would mean designing more of the world around it. On top of that, World already has DK Pass, which is also a snowy mountain track. Obviously Mount Wario is a lot better, but the fact that they added ski portions and cabins to DK Pass kind of makes it feel like it's here in Mount Wario's place. On top of all that, apparently due to how the track is currently designed, Mount Wario would actually be impossible to exist since the track overlaps itself in a weird way. While we don't see it in 8 Deluxe because of how culling works, this wouldn't function the same in Mario Kart World. So unfortunately, I can't place Mount Wario super high on the tier list. Due to how popular the track is, and the fact that the gameplay itself could be tweaked to fit into World though, I won't put it terribly low on the list either. better. That might be a cope, but I think a B tier is what I'm feeling at the moment. And for our final base game cup, we have the Special Cup. Cloudtop Cruise kicks this one off, and it's definitely one of my favorite tracks in the game. Part of that comes from its cloudy aesthetic, which isn't really seen at all in Mario Kart World. You could argue that Great Question Block Ruins has some clouds, but come on, the tracks clearly give off different vibes. I would love to explore a cloudy landscape, and it's easy to imagine this track being reached in the open world by a cannon shot. As for the layout, this actually has a surprisingly little amount of anti-gravity. It's only seen on another mysterious floating sky strip like in Sunshine Airport. This one does feel a bit more justified being anti-gravity, but I also don't think most people would notice or even care if it was just made normal. On top of that, I think it would be really cool if this section used the new speeding road gimmick that's found in tracks like Bowser's Castle. That would be an easy improvement and clear reason to add this into World. The main downside I can think of is just the fact that we have to drive on an airship for part of it, but we already have Airship Fortress as a track. Well, luckily, not only are the vibes of the two tracks polar opposites, but Cloudtop Cruise also uses its airship very briefly. So honestly, coming as a bit as a surprise to me, I think Cloudtop Cruise belongs in A tier. It really doesn't have that many issues. Bone Dry Dunes is up next, and I am so happy I can disown you now that we have Dry Bones Burnout. We already have a Dry Bones track in World, and it's a whole lot better than Bone Dry Dunes could ever dream of being. Sure, beside the bones there are a decent amount of aesthetic differences, but if we want to go that route, we already have plenty of desert tracks. I can't handle both of you in the same game, but unfortunately, for the sake of this tier list, the layout isn't too impacted by our limitations. The only portion using anti-gravity is one of the split paths near the end. It's the one that everyone takes, but I could easily see that just being flattened out. So I can't really rank it too low, because it would be pretty straightforward to add in. So it gets a reluctant B tier, but man do I not want it. This cup ends with both Bowser's Castle and Rainbow Road, which both have similar issues. Primarily, the fact that a Bowser's Castle and Rainbow Road already exist in Mario Kart World. Now, many Mario Kart games have had multiple of these track themes before. I mean, 8 Deluxe had 5 different Rainbow Roads. I just don't see World doing the same, at least for a while. As for the track specifically, Bowser's Castle is at least quite different from what we already have. The one in World is a floating castle, which gives off a totally different feel from the more standard grounded castle seen in 8 Deluxe. The obstacles between the two are totally different, so I think they could coexist sometime down the line. As for the layout, there is a lot of anti-gravity, but not much that feels totally required. There's a bit near the start where we have to dodge some fire bars and a pendulum, but I could easily see this working without it needing to be so sloped. The Bowser room would be a bit harder though, as him punching the road next to him is a big part of the stage's identity. They could make the roads flat and have him slam down his fist instead, but that doesn't feel quite as strong. As for Rainbow Road, while it uses a lot of anti-gravity, I'm gonna be a bit more forgiving since Rainbow Road is the sole track that uses anti-gravity in Mario Kart World. The main concern for it is just the fact that I think it's the least likely Rainbow Road to be remade. Super Circuit, DS, and Double Dash have all never received remakes for their Rainbow Roads, so they'd be a much higher priority. I'd especially love to see Super Circuits due to the new parkour mechanics. And the fact that there's no Super Circuit tracks, why did they do that? Mario Kart 8's Rainbow Road also has the space station overlap that's seen in World's rendition, making it a lot less necessary to come over. So for both of these, I'm gonna put them at the bottom of C tier. They both are certainly possible, I just don't see a reason for them to join right now. Bowser's Castle is higher just because it's more different from its World counterpart compared to the Rainbow Roads. And with the base Mario Kart 8 tracks out of the way, it's time we break into the DLC, which gave us 9 different tracks to talk about. The Egg Cup had the most with a total of 3, but it shows right away how it's going to be difficult as the first track is Excitebike Arena. Gameplay wise, there is no anti-gravity and no underwater driving, so you may think it's an easy lock. But, that's not Mario. Yeah, the non-Mario tracks were difficult for me to think about for this video. Due to them being from totally separate gaming universes, plopping them into a shared open world could be a bit of a challenge and something Nintendo may not want to try. At the same time though, crossover DLC sounds like it could be perfect to sell, and these tracks would likely be the first to come with those purchases. So for the sake of this tier list, I decided that most of the non-Mario tracks will be hurt due to being from different franchises, but won't be impossible. Until we see a Link show up on the roster, I think that's pretty fair. With that being said, Excitebike was not one of the tracks that came with a matching character. It's still a crossover, but something more on the level of the Raw Pog, which does exist in Mario Kart World. So I could possibly see this joining in as the lone crossover track, but there are more issues holding it back. For one, we already have a similar trick-based arena in Wario Stadium. There's plenty of differences between the tracks, especially layout-wise, but that is still a factor worth considering. Secondly, Excitebike has the special gimmick of getting a randomized layout each time you play, and that just seems harder to implement with Mario Kart World's interconnected nature. Now they could just add this in without the randomized randomization, and I don't think most people would care or even notice, but I still think it's another factor to consider. All of this adds up to me wanting to put this in C tier. If they wanted to add Excitebike, they easily could, it just comes down to if Nintendo does want it. Dragon Driftway is the second original track of the Egg Cup, and I don't think I'll get much pushback for thinking its chances are looking grim. By design, this is one of the twistiest tracks in the entire series, and anti-gravity plays a huge part in that. Seeing as this track is based on Gobblegut, a boss from Mario Galaxy 2, it makes complete sense for it to be so reliant on anti-gravity. I just can't see this working without it, and if they tried, this would be absolutely butchered. Not to mention that I think this would be hard to implement in the open world due to being a floating dragon. So honestly, I think F tier is deserved for this one. It's certainly more possible than the other two here, but it's still extremely unlikely. If it's anything, I could at least see the battle map Dragon Palace making it into the game as DLC instead. And I hope they do, because battle mode needs help. The Egg Cup ended off with Mute City, and yeah, this one might be even worse. Not only does it have the nerf of being from a different franchise, this is just as reliant on anti-gravity as Dragon Driftway. In fact, the entire track is in anti-gravity, so it's safe to assume that that'd be pretty hard to update. The mechanic is pretty much required to be here to truly match the feel of F-Zero, and attempting to make this track without it would just be killing what people loved about it. The only scenario I can see this track being added in is if it's not part of the open world at all like Rainbow Road, but that's not really the point of this video, so I think this is going to have to land in F tier. I don't see any way around that. Kicking off the Triforce Cup, we have Wario's Gold Mine. That's not a Mario Kart 8 course. We have Ice Ice Outpost. Now, this is a track that I have always personally felt was a bit underrated. There's a lot of fun shortcuts here, and I think that could definitely be expanded on in World. As for the layout, most of the track is perfectly fine right up until the end where the split path decides to get all funky with some anti-gravity. Honestly though, it's such a small factor of the track's design that they could certainly work around this if they wanted to make it work. It honestly might be less sloped anyway than this turn in Starview Peak. But this does also show another weird issue. If Ice Ice Outpost got added, that would be 2 ice stages in the same game with the split green and yellow path. The two play totally different, but that would be a weird coincidence. Even if that wasn't a problem, there are quite a few ice tracks in World already, so it may seem a bit repetitive theming wise. I still think it deserves B tier though. Ending off the cup is Hyrule Circuit from the Zelda series. Non-Mario nerf aside, there really aren't many issues here. The only anti-gravity in the entire track is on the staircase leading down toward the Master Sword. You could literally just make this not anti-gravity and nothing would change. The only reason it's that way in Mario Kart 8 is because unlocking the ramp requires you to hit these anti-gravity boosters, but surely Nintendo can come up with some other way to include this feature without anti-gravity being needed. What also helps this track's chances compared to the other non-Mario tracks is the fact that it's Zelda, Nintendo's #2 franchise. Actually, sales-wise... If any franchise is going to cross over with Mario Kart first, this is the one to do it. I still can't bring myself to put it above C, but I will leave it at the top of this tier. Next up is another collab cup with the Crossing Cup. The first original track here is Wild Woods, and I definitely can't see this one happening. For one, we already have the new Acorn Heights, which I think scratches the tree itch just fine. Granted, a lot of Wild Woods takes place inside a tree, so it is different, but I think that also makes it even less likely. Remember, these have to connect to an open world, so being inside something already makes that harder to do since they now have to design a giant tree for the overworld. On top of that, there is just a lot of anti-gravity that I can't really see this track working without. It's supposed to replicate us climbing the tree, which can't really be done well without that central mechanic. So for all these reasons, I think Wild Woods deserves D tier. The Crossing Cup ends with Animal Crossing from Animal Crossing. Best sentence I've ever written. This track actually has no problematic gameplay elements. You can maybe say a tiny fraction of your car goes underwater at the beach portion, but that's literally it. But see, the track's whole gimmick is that it randomly chooses between 4 different seasons every time you play. That obviously fits the Animal Crossing series going off the real-life calendar, so I think it's an important part of the track's identity. I unfortunately just can't see that working in the open world, even more than the Excitebike randomization. It would be so odd to blend this track in with its surroundings if it changes every time you go there. It would at least be nice for the track to work with the new day and night cycle, but it would be a decent hit if it lost seasons. Animal Crossing is also a huge franchise, but I think a little less likely to collab with Mario Kart again than Zelda is, though Animal Crossing is probably the next choice. So it's for those reasons that I think this track places below most of the other collabs in C tier. The Bell Cup is our final one of the video, and we're starting off with Super Bell Subway. Immediately off the bat, this course looks very promising. There is absolutely no anti-gravity or underwater sections to speak of. On top of that, a big part of the track is about dodging trains, and with them comes rails. This would be such an easy implementation of Mario Kart World's rail grinding gimmick. An underground subway is also a pretty unique theme for the open world, but that does also come with one big issue. This track is entirely indoors. There's absolutely nothing to connect it to the outside world. That would require a lot of of extra work to make a building for this track to be in and also leave spots to get in or out. Now with that being said, that can absolutely be done. I mean, Wario Stadium was a fully enclosed track beside having an open roof, so if they could work that track in, they could certainly do the same for Super Battle Subway. I think the effort would be worth it for this track too. It's not my personal favorite, but I think the additions of World's gameplay could certainly serve to make this track much more interesting. For those reasons, I think this belongs at the top of A tier. The interior thing is really the only thing holding it back from S. And for our final track of the video, we have Big Blue once again coming from F-Zero. Sorry to end on a bummer, this one's not happening. Not only does it use anti-gravity through the entire thing just like Mute City, but it's also a section track which would make it much harder to implement. As much as I love this course because it's genuinely fantastic, I can't see anywhere else for this other than below Mute City in F tier. What a positive note to end the video on. But anyways, that's it for this video. Do you think the anti-gravity walls are essential in Thwomp Ruins and hate me for suggesting otherwise? Let me know in the comments. I had a lot of fun with this video, definitely pretty different from what I normally make, but it was cool to look back at all of these tracks. Hopefully we can at least see some of the S or A tiers in World eventually, if they ever make DLC. But before I go, I've got to thank my members being Lidhard von Hevering, Fredbear's Diner, Schmendy, Maidzo2, Magnus and Lars Lot, Trifector, Tibby, Drybones Likes Fire Protection, Mario Master 101, Hippopotamus, Levi Strux, Nuclear, Cassie Channel, Blast Tiger, Yanni the Duck, Wyatt Derpy, Trader Mo, Mevins 2001, Kid Trunks 15, Enchanted Skull, SMA, B Major 2003, Arson the Rat Boot, Sir Moosty, Belandor, Cinder CC, Jade Avery, Pronto Clone, Thicky Reiki, Ungenio TM, CW McCain, JubeTube Tesseract, Jameson Pageson, Golden Sunsash 15, Z Frost, Stuffy Ant, Concanut to Keep, and Christian Flattery Sequel Edition. But anyways, dry bones for Smash, and I'll see you guys next time.